The lavender mists of Kepler 247b swirled around Lieutenant Marcus Reed's boots as he crested the hill. His environment suit's sensors pierced the thick fog, revealing the ruins of an ancient settlement below. What had started as a routine patrol of the colony's outer perimeter had turned into something else entirely when his scanners picked up the energy signatures. "Base, this is Reed," he reported, adjusting his helmet's filters. "I'm picking up multiple biosignatures in Sector 7. Energy weapons discharge detected." Static crackled before Captain Sharma's voice cut through. "Copy that, Lieutenant. Colony records show no authorized settlements in that region. Maintain distance and observe." Marcus was about to acknowledge when he heard it, a child's cry echoing through the mist, followed by the distinctive hum of energy weapons. His combat instincts kicked in as he spotted movement below, tall, shadowy figures wielding what appeared to be advanced energy bows, their arrows leaving trails of blue fire in the fog. A smaller figure darted between the ruins, clutching something close to its chest. Even through the mist, Marcus could make out the mother's iridescent skin and the smaller form of her child held protectively against her. Behind them, warriors in tribal garb knocked their energy arrows. Protocol dictated non-interference with native conflicts. But as Marcus watched the mother stumble, shielding her child with her body as the first arrows began to fall, he knew he couldn't stand by. "Base, invoking Emergency Protocol 7 Alpha, he transmitted, already moving. Civilian casualties imminent. Moving to intervene." He didn't wait for a response. Using his suit's enhanced mobility, Marcus sprinted down the hillside, the mists parting before him. His pulse rifle came up just as an energy arrow streaked toward the mother. Marcus's shot dissipated the arrow in mid-flight. The raiders turned toward him, their faceless masks reflecting the purple mist. He counted at least 8 of them, each armed with the strange energy bows that seemed to blend ancient design with advanced technology. "Over here," he called to the mother, gesturing toward a partially standing structure. "I'll cover you." The alien mother's large, luminescent eyes widened at the sight of him. Her child, no bigger than a human toddler, peered at Marcus with 4 matching eyes. Their skin shimmered with patterns that shifted like oil on water, and Marcus's translator picked up their rapid, musical language. "Behind you," the mother's translated voice rang in his helmet as another group of raiders emerged from the mist. Marcus spun, his rifle spitting pulses of energy that forced the raiders back. But more were coming, their arrows beginning to fill the air with deadly blue light. He reached the mother and child, positioning himself between them and their pursuers. "This way," he said, indicating a narrow passage between 2 ruins. "Stay close." The child whimpered something, and the mother's response made Marcus's translator chime, "Trust him, little one. He is not like the others." They moved through the ruins as Marcus provided covering fire. His military training combined with the suit's enhanced capabilities kept them one step ahead of their pursuers, but the raiders seemed to know the terrain far better than he did. "Why are they after you?" he asked as they took cover behind a fallen column. The child clung to its mother, their combined bioluminescence pulsing with what Marcus recognized as fear. "We are the last of the healing mothers," she replied, her translated voice carrying both pride and exhaustion. "Our gifts were meant to ease suffering, but the Shadow Clan would use them to dominate. They hunt us, seek to enslave us, to force us to use our abilities for their wars." Marcus's tactical display showed more raiders converging on their position. The mother was wounded, traces of luminescent blood seeping from where an arrow had grazed her shoulder. The child watched him with eyes that seemed far too knowing for one so young. "Base, this is Reed," he transmitted. "Request immediate evacuation. I've got 2 civilian refugees under heavy fire. Requesting permission to bring them back to the colony." Captain Sharma's response was immediate, "Negative, Lieutenant. First contact protocols have already been breached," Marcus finished. "And I'm looking at a wounded mother and scared child." We can debate protocols after we save their lives. An energy arrow struck the column above them, showering them with ancient stone. The child flinched, and the mother pulled it closer. Marcus made his decision. "I'm getting you both out of here," he said, checking his rifle's charge. "But I need you to trust me. Can you run?" The mother nodded, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to something more determined. "We can run. But the temple, we must reach the temple. Our people's sacred knowledge is stored there. If the Shadow Clan claims it, then we get to it first," Marcus said, his suit's mapping system already plotting the quickest route through the ruins. "Stay behind me, move when I move, stop when I stop. Ready?" The child reached out suddenly, touching Marcus's armored hand. Where its fingers made contact, patterns of light danced across his suit's surface, matching their own bioluminescence. A gesture of trust. Marcus nodded to them both, then rose from cover, rifle ready. "Let's move." Above them, Kepler 247b's twin moons broke through the clouds, casting strange shadows through the lavender mist. Somewhere ahead lay the temple and safety. Behind them, the raiders' energy arrows began to fill the air once more, and their real trial was just beginning. The ancient temple loomed before them, its spires piercing through the lavender mist like ghost-pale fingers reaching for the twin moons. Marcus led the mother and child through a maze of fallen columns, his rifle sweeping the shadows as energy arrows continued to rain around them. "How much further?" he asked, his suit sensors struggling to penetrate the deepening fog. The temple's unusual architecture seemed to confuse his scanning equipment, creating phantom readings that danced across his tactical display. "The entrance lies beneath," the mother replied, her luminescent patterns dimming with fatigue. "Hidden from those who would abuse our gifts." She stumbled, and Marcus caught her before she fell. The arrow wound on her shoulder pulsed with dangerous brightness. The child, whom Marcus had learned was called Lyra, touched its mother's wound with tiny glowing fingers. Where they made contact, the bleeding slowed, but the effort clearly drained the young one. Lyra's own bioluminescence flickered like a dying star. "Save your strength, little one," Marcus said softly, his translator converting his words into their musical language. "I'll get you both there safely." A volley of energy arrows interrupted their moment of respite, forcing them deeper into the ruins. Marcus's tactical training told him the raiders were hurting them, using the temple's massive bulk to limit their escape routes. But to what end? He got his answer as they rounded a corner and found themselves facing a sheer cliff face. The temple's main structure sat atop it, seemingly unreachable. More raiders emerged from the mist behind them, their energy bows drawn. "Surrender the healing mothers," a deep voice commanded. "The power of life and death belongs to the strong. The Shadow Clan will have dominion." Marcus positioned himself between the raiders and his charges, rifle ready. "The power of healing belongs to those who use it wisely," he replied, remembering the mother's earlier words. "Not to those who would corrupt it." The lead raider stepped forward, his mask carved with symbols that glowed with the same energy as their arrows. "You are an outsider. You do not understand our ways. The weak must serve the strong. It is the law of nature." "No," the mother said, her voice carrying unexpected strength. "It is your corruption of our ways that brought us to this. The gift of healing was meant to unite our people, not divide them." She placed her hand on a seemingly ordinary section of the cliff face. "And we will not let you twist it into a weapon." Patterns of light spread from her touch, revealing intricate circuits carved into the stone. The child added its own touch, and the patterns grew brighter, more complex. Marcus's suit sensors went haywire as ancient machinery hummed to life beneath their feet. "Stop them," the lead raider roared. "The secrets of the temple must be dash." The ground shifted, revealing a hidden entrance. Marcus didn't hesitate. He fired a sustained burst that forced the raiders back, then guided the mother and child into the opening. The door began to close behind them, but not before several energy arrows found their mark. Marcus grunted as one arrow pierced his suit's shoulder plating. The energy weapon bypassed his armor's primary defenses, sending waves of numbness down his arm. His rifle clattered to the ground. "You're hurt." Lyra's translated voice carried genuine concern. The child reached for his wound, but Marcus gently stopped those glowing fingers. "Save your strength," he said through gritted teeth. "Your mother needs your gift more than I do." He retrieved his rifle with his good arm, checking the charge. "How far to the inner sanctuary?" The mother pointed down a corridor that seemed to spiral impossibly downward. "The heart of the temple lies below. But the Shadow Clan will find another way in. They always do. Then we better get moving." Marcus activated his suit's medical systems to dull the pain. "Stay close. And watch for dash." A distant explosion cut him off, followed by the sound of breaking stone. The raiders were forcing their way in. "They defile the sacred temple itself," the mother whispered, her patterns shifting with anger and fear. "All to possess the power of healing." "They won't succeed," Marcus promised, checking his tactical display. The temple's interior was a maze of twisting corridors and chambers, but his military training kicked in, identifying defensible positions and potential ambush points. "Your people's knowledge stays safe. You have my word." Lyra touched his armored hand again, sending patterns of light dancing across its surface. The child's 4 eyes met his visor, and Marcus's translator conveyed a simple message: "We trust you." The weight of that trust settled on Marcus's shoulders as heavily as his damaged armor. He'd broken countless protocols today, risked his career and possibly his life, all to protect a mother and child he'd just met. But looking at their determined faces, seeing the hope there despite their fear, he knew he'd make the same choice again. Another explosion echoed through the temple, closer this time. Marcus readied his rifle, ignoring the pain in his shoulder. "Stay behind me," he said. "And if I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" They nodded, their bioluminescence synchronizing in what he realized was a gesture of deep trust. Together, they descended into the temple's depths, while above them, the raiders' energy arrows began to pierce the ancient darkness. The real test of their trust, and Marcus's promise to protect them, was about to begin. The ancient temple's lower levels thrummed with power as Marcus led the mother and child through twisting corridors. His suit's damaged systems cast strange shadows on walls covered in luminescent circuits, their patterns matching the failing light of the wounded mother's bioluminescence. "We're being followed," Marcus whispered, his enhanced hearing picking up the echo of footsteps from multiple directions. The raiders had split up, trying to corner them in the maze-like structure. "How much further to the sanctuary?" "Through the Valley of Echoes," the mother replied, her translated voice weaker than before. The energy arrow's wound was taking its toll, despite Lyra's attempts to heal it. "But we must be careful. The valley, it protects itself." As if in response to her words, the corridor ahead shimmered, revealing a vast underground cavern. Marcus's breath caught at the sight. A narrow path wound through a forest of crystalline formations, each one humming with its own frequency. The combined sound created an ethereal chorus that made his suit's audio sensors crackle. "The crystals respond to thought and emotion," the mother explained, steadying herself against a wall. "They will show us the true path, or drive intruders to madness." Marcus checked his tactical display, but the crystals were interfering with his sensors. They were running blind. "How do we know which way to go?" Little Lyra stepped forward, her 4 eyes reflecting the crystal lights. Her tiny hand found Marcus's armored one. Through their contact, he felt rather than heard a melody threading through the crystal chorus. "Trust," the child's translated voice whispered. "Like you taught us." A raider's energy arrow shattered a crystal behind them, sending discordant notes screaming through the cavern. Marcus pushed the mother and child behind a larger formation as more arrows filled the air. Each impact created new sounds, turning the crystal chorus into a chaotic symphony. The outsider dies. The lead raider's voice boomed across the valley. The healing mothers belong to the Shadow Clan. Marcus counted at least 6 distinct sources of weapons fire. His rifle's charge was dangerously low, and his injured shoulder made accurate shooting difficult. But as he prepared to return fire, he noticed something strange. The raiders' shots were becoming increasingly erratic. Their confident advance had turned into confused wandering. The crystal chorus was affecting them, distorting their perception. "The valley protects its own," the mother said, her patterns brightening slightly. "But we must hurry. The sanctuary's defenses will not last forever." Marcus nodded, understanding their advantage. The mother and child's natural bioluminescence harmonized with the crystals, showing them the safe path. His connection through Lyra's touch would guide him as well. "Stay close," he instructed, helping the mother to her feet. "Step exactly where I step." They began their careful journey through the crystal forest. Around them, raiders fired blindly into the chaos of light and sound. Some crystals shattered, while others seemed to absorb the energy arrows, transforming them into new notes in the endless song. Marcus felt Lyra's grip tighten as they passed a particularly large crystal formation. In its reflective surface, he caught glimpses of what appeared to be memories, generations of healing mothers using their gifts to help others, to cure plagues, to bring life to barren worlds. The crystal chorus swelled with the weight of history. "The Shadow Clan has forgotten," the mother said sadly, watching the images. "We were once one people, before power corrupted them." An energy arrow struck uncomfortably close, reminding them of their pursuers. But the raiders were clearly struggling. Some had fallen to their knees, overwhelmed by the crystal song. Others fired wildly, their tribal masks unable to filter out the maddening frequencies. "Contact!" Marcus warned as 2 raiders emerged from behind a crystal cluster. He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, the crystals around them flared brilliantly. The raiders screamed, clawing at their masks as the valley's song overwhelmed their senses. "Do not watch," the mother advised, shielding Lyra's eyes. "The valley's justice is not meant for innocent eyes." They pressed on, following the harmonious path while chaos erupted around them. Marcus's tactical training warred with his instincts, everything here defied standard combat doctrine. But he was learning to trust in things beyond military protocol. The sanctuary entrance, the mother pointed to a distant archway that pulsed with familiar patterns. "We're almost dash." Her words cut off as she stumbled, her wound flaring with dangerous brightness. Lyra cried out in their musical language, trying to help, but her young powers were nearly exhausted. The sanctuary's entrance chamber was vast, its domed ceiling disappearing into shadows above. Ancient pillars lined the circular room, each one pulsing with the same bioluminescent patterns as the mother and child. But it was the figures between the pillars that commanded Marcus's attention. A dozen Shadow Clan warriors waited in a semicircle, their energy bows trained on the newcomers. Their leader stood at the center, his mask more elaborate than the others, carved with symbols that burned with cold fire. "The cycle ends here," the leader declared, his translated voice resonating through the chamber. "Surrender the gift of healing to its rightful masters." Marcus gently set the wounded mother down, keeping himself between the warriors and his charges. His rifle's charge indicator blinked a warning, 3 shots left, maybe 4. "Not nearly enough. Your actions dishonor our ancestors," the mother said, her voice weak but unwavering. "The gift was meant to heal, not harm. To unite, not divide." The leader removed his mask, revealing features similar to the mother's but twisted with ambition. "The strong must rule the weak. It is nature's law. With the power of the healing mothers, the Shadow Clan will bring order to a chaotic galaxy." Little Lyra stepped forward, her 4 eyes bright with an wisdom beyond her years. "But who will heal your heart, uncle?" The leader flinched at the child's words. Marcus's translator caught fragments of emotion in the harmonics of their language: pain, betrayal, loss. There was history here, deep and personal. "You dare speak to me of healing?" the leader snarled. "After your mother refused to save my wife? After she let her die rather than use the gift's full power?" "Sister," the mother corrected softly. "My sister chose her path. She knew the price of what you asked, that healing one by force draining the life force of another was an abomination. She chose to die with honor rather than twist our gift into a weapon." Marcus's tactical training kicked in as he assessed the situation. The warriors were well positioned, their shots would be devastating in the enclosed space. But they were also standing on the sanctuary's floor, which pulsed with the same patterns as Lyra, he whispered, an idea forming. "The patterns on the floor, can you make them sing like the crystals?" The child's eyes widened in understanding. Her small hand found his, and Marcus felt rather than heard her intent. They would have one chance. The leader raised his energy bow. "Enough. Take them. Kill the outsider. Now!" Marcus shouted. He fired his remaining shots at the ceiling as Lyra pressed her free hand to the floor. The sanctuary's patterns flared brilliantly, and a harmonic wave rippled through the chamber. The same resonance that had protected them in the Valley of Echoes now filled the sacred space. The warriors staggered as the sanctuary itself began to sing. Their masks, designed to intimidate rather than protect, offered no defense against the overwhelming harmonics. Energy arrows flew wild, some dissipating against the pillars, others absorbed into the resonating patterns. Marcus scooped up the mother and ran for the inner sanctuary doors, Lyra guiding them through the chaos. Behind them, the leader fought against the resonance, struggling to take aim. "You cannot escape," he roared, firing a desperate shot. The arrow struck Marcus's already damaged shoulder, sending him stumbling. But he kept his grip on the mother, kept moving. Lyra's connection gave him strength, helped him fight through the pain. They reached the inner doors just as the leader broke free of the resonance's effect. Marcus saw him draw another arrow, saw the killing shot align with Lyra's small form. Without thinking, he spun, shielding both mother and child with his armored body. But the shot never came. The leader's bow clattered to the floor as the sanctuary's song reached a crescendo. The patterns on the walls, floor, and ceiling converged, creating a barrier of pure harmonic energy. Through it, they watched as the Shadow Clan warriors fell one by one, overwhelmed by the ancient defense systems their hatred had activated. The leader was the last to fall, his final words carried to them through the barrier: "Sister, forgive me." Then silence fell, broken only by the gentle hum of the sanctuary's normal operations. The barrier faded, leaving them alone in the vast chamber. "The sanctuary has judged," the mother said softly. "As it has done since the first healing mothers walked these halls." Marcus set her down carefully, his injured shoulder screaming in protest. Lyra immediately pressed her small hands to his wound, her depleted powers still trying to help. "Save your strength, little one," he said gently. "We still need to get your mother to safety." But the child persisted, and Marcus felt a warmth spread from the point of contact. Looking down, he saw his armor's damaged sections knitting themselves back together, the pain fading to a dull ache. "The gift grows stronger here," the mother explained, her own patterns brightening as the sanctuary's energy renewed her. "In the heart of our ancestors' power, healing comes more easily." Marcus watched in amazement as both mother and child seemed to draw strength from their surroundings. The sanctuary was more than just a refuge, it was a source of power, a wellspring of their people's abilities. "What happens now?" he asked, knowing his mission had evolved far beyond a simple rescue. The mother smiled, her patterns forming complex shapes that his translator rendered as both gratitude and invitation. "Now, Lieutenant Marcus Reed, you help us rebuild. The ShadowClan's actions have shown that our people can no longer remain hidden. We need allies who understand the true purpose of our gift. Lyra took his hand once more, adding her own patterns to her mother's message. Through their connection, Marcus felt the possibility of a future where humanity and the healing mothers work together, using their combined strengths to help rather than harm. Besides, the child's translated voice carried a hint of mischief. You still have much to learn about trust. Marcus looked around the sanctuary, at the ancient wisdom encoded in its walls and the future represented by the small hand in his. He thought about his career, about protocols and regulations, about all the reasons he should walk away. Then he thought about the choice he'd made in those first moments, when he'd heard a child's cry in the mist. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. The sanctuary's patterns pulsed once, as if in approval, and the inner doors began to open, revealing the true heart of the healing mother's power. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 3 days had passed since the confrontation in the sanctuary. Marcus stood at the temple's highest spire, watching the twin moons of Kepler, 247b rise above the lavender mist. Below, the first transport ships from the human colony were landing, bringing medical teams and diplomatic representatives. The mother, whose name he now knew was Celera, stood beside him, her bioluminescent patterns forming complex shapes that reflected off his polished armor. She had recovered fully in the sanctuary's healing chambers, though her eyes still held a sadness when she spoke of her fallen brother. "The first step is always the hardest," she said, watching the human ships land. "For generations, we hid our gifts, fearing they would be misused. Perhaps that fear itself led to the ShadowClan's corruption." "Fear has a way of twisting even the noblest intentions," Marcus replied, thinking of the desperate anger in the leader's final moments. "But so does hope have a way of building bridges." A familiar small hand slipped into his, and Lyra's patterns joined her mother's in a dance of light across his armor. The child had hardly left his side since the battle, apparently having adopted him as a combination of protector and student. "The council is gathering," Lyra's translated voice chimed in his helmet. "They want to meet the human who trusted before he understood." Marcus smiled. The surviving healing mothers had emerged from hiding after news of the ShadowClan's defeat spread. Each day, more arrived at the temple, their combined bioluminescence turning the ancient structure into a beacon of light visible even through the perpetual mist. They made their way down to the sanctuary's main chamber, now repurposed as a meeting hall. Where days ago there had been battle and discord, now representatives from both species gathered in careful optimism. Captain Sharma stood with the human delegation, his initial anger at Marcus's protocol breaches having transformed into cautious support once the full situation became clear. The potential benefits of an alliance with the healing mothers were too significant to ignore. "Lieutenant Reed," Sharma nodded as they approached. "The council is ready to begin." The healing mothers had arranged themselves in a circle, their patterns synchronizing into a symphonic light show that made Marcus's translator work overtime processing the layers of meaning. At their center stood the oldest among them, her luminescence a soft, steady glow of accumulated wisdom. Marcus Reed, the elder's translated voice filled the chamber. "You acted when others would have watched. You trusted when others would have doubted. You protected when others would have taken. How do you plead to these charges?" Marcus straightened, feeling Lyra's small hand squeeze his. "I plead guilty to following my conscience, Elder. To choosing compassion over protocol. To believing that power should heal, not harm." A ripple of harmonious light passed through the assembled healing mothers. The elder's patterns shifted in what Marcus had learned to recognize as approval. "Then you are indeed guilty," she announced, "of embodying the very principles our ancestors sought to preserve. Your actions have shown us that isolation breeds fear, while trust breeds understanding." She turned to address both delegations. "For too long, we have hidden our gifts, allowing darkness to grow in the shadows of our secrecy. The ShadowClan's fall is both an ending and a beginning. It is time for the healing mothers to emerge into the light. Captain Sharma stepped forward. We understand the responsibility that comes with this trust. Earth's medical facilities and research institutions stand ready to work with you, to learn from you, and to help distribute your healing gifts to those in need across the galaxy. And we will teach, Celera added, her patterns bright with purpose. Not just the art of healing, but the wisdom to know when and how to use such power. The first joint medical facility will be established here, the elder declared.